I know nobody knows who I am. And I'm somebody from Megan's past that I'll talk about in a second. Before I do that, given what Larry Dan said, I have to tell you a quick story. I have a daughter who is 26 years old. 26 years ago, Megan made what was probably the most important and wisest trip of her life, and that was the trip from Pennsylvania to Eugene. During that trip, she stopped and stayed with my wife and I and kids in Chicago for a few days, and she brought to us a baby blanket for our newborn daughter. A couple of days, a few days ago, when I talked with Rachel, my daughter, who is this hip 26-year-old New York PR person, and I told her about Megan's passing, and she said, "Megan, she made my blankie." And I mean, I met Megan mid-70s at the University of Wisconsin, where we were all graduate students. And I'd never really met anybody like Megan before, because in those days, and looking around here, many of you were not obviously born at that time. A few were. But Megan was this, I mean, Madison, Wisconsin in those days, and the war was going on and all these kinds of things. And Megan was this freshly scrubbed, clean-cut, like real-deal Midwestern kid. And I was just kind of, I'd never really met anybody like that, especially I'm from Texas, and I'd never met anybody quite like that in Texas. And I was talking with my wife, Patty, who incidentally is so sad she can't be here today, and sends her love to Wayne and the boys and Megan's sisters. And Patty, as women often are, is very visual. And what she remembers about Megan is the visual. She remembers her stylish wedge haircut. I don't even know what that is, but she remembers that. She remembers Megan's peppy walk. Now, I do know what that is, but mass of hippiedom at the time, Megan was just this clean-cut, stylish person who was really kind of, she was just her own person. She was an incredibly centered person, an incredibly grounded person, and she wasn't that influenced by all the passing trends that were around her. She really had her own drummer, and she marched to that drummer. She did Patty's peppy walk to that drummer. She rode her bike to that drummer. She swam to that drummer, and she lived her life to that drummer. And in Madison at the time, it was really funny because I guess because of the war, people were angry. They were cynical about the institutions that our parents had left to us. And I never saw that in Megan. Graduate student in agricultural economics, and she was studying finance. And I said to her, amid all this stuff that was going on, I said, "Why are you studying finance? I mean, why are you studying something that's just going to help the man?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, I actually think it's very interesting." Things that didn't influence her. She knew who she was, and she kind of just sort of kept going. Okay, I hate to bring this up. As all of you know, Megan had a cursing problem. Her problem was she didn't know how to do it. In fact, the worst thing that I ever heard Megan say was, "Oh my gosh." But she didn't say it that loudly. Buddhists have this thing about being in the moment, being here now. being present, or having all your attention sort of in the immediate instant. And I know Megan wasn't a Buddhist, but she had that kind of thing in her DNA. When she was talking with you, her attention was there. She was always there. A dry, cold, intellectual attention. It was, as Patty reminded me, she always felt that Megan's attention was infused with a kind, constant, upbeat sweetness. And that was just sort of always there. Last night, I was hanging out with the Partch and the Michelson families. And we were doing what people do when they are lost. We were talking about all kinds of other things to get our attention off the loss we were feeling. But we were all thinking about Megan. And I remember sitting there and looking at Megan's sisters and seeing in their faces, I saw Megan in their faces. And, of course, part of it was just the outlines of the physical. But more than that, it was in this really rambunctious, irreverent group of sisters. There was this same kind of centeredness and this same groundedness that Megan had. So it was just wonderful to see that. So despite the sense of loss that we all feel right now, today, I have to say that I am in some way very happy. I'm happy that my friend Megan Partch led such a wonderfully rich life that touched so many people, as evidenced by this large group today. I'm happy that she fought so hard against a stupid disease. And when she realized where things stood, she left the earth with a courage and grace that is an inspiration to all of us. I'm happy that I understand even more deeply the wonderful love story that is Megan and Wayne. I'm happy seeing the wonderful strapping spirits in Evan and Lewis that Megan has left behind. Megan Partch, you were a class act, and none of us will ever, ever forget you.